Aluxers, as we put this video out, the USA is witnessing massive countrywide protests following the tragic killing of George Floyd in police custody. Elsewhere, the world seems to be emerging from the coronavirus lockdown to come back to realities that we've been facing the last few years. Concerns ranging from growing distrust of government to fake news, from hate crimes to climate change. In fact, in a worldwide poll carried out in late 2019, over half the responders stated they think their country's society is broken, which is indeed cause for concern. Our aim here isn't to put you all on a downer, and we're not pretending that we can come up with a magic formula out of thin air to make these problems disappear. That definitely can't be done in a video of this length. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out. What we hope to do is take a look at the root causes of these problems and provide some food for thought that will hopefully help encourage debate and help to find us solutions. Aluxers, you know that your comments are always welcome, and even more so in this time. It goes without saying that if you comment, please keep the discussion respectful and civilized. So, let's start trying to put the world right as we look at the 15 ways society is broken and hopefully 15 ideas on how we can collectively fix them. Number 1. The feeling that politicians are out of touch. It seems like a tired cliche that people don't trust politicians, and we don't even realize that once people did have faith in them. In 1958, over 70% of Americans trusted the government to do the right thing. By 2015, that was down to under 20%, and the same trend is at play in other countries too. How this has happened isn't that simple, but at the top of the list of reasons seems to be the feeling that they serve big business interests more than the ordinary person. And that's a feeling that's pretty justified. A far more complicated question is how to solve this. A good starting point is getting out to vote. That's something that's worth emphasizing in times of low voter turnout, in which not voting means helping whoever wins. And you could even consider getting involved in politics at some level. The more people who do this and stay true to their core beliefs, the more likely things can change for the better. Number 2. The growing income gap between the rich and the poor. In wealthy countries, income distribution is now the most uneven it's been in half a century. It causes dissatisfaction, and yes, it leads to the first point we made, that people feel governments serve the rich. The solution needs to be at the government level, allowing economies and companies that employ people to prosper, but making sure the poorer parts of society benefit too. And to get governments in power that will do this, the solution is the same as with the first point on our list: being well informed and making sure your vote counts. Number 3. The worldwide rise of populist leaders. What happens when populations feel that their politicians are out of touch? A lot of them feel they need a strong figure to lead them with an unconventional approach. In France, 77% of the population recently said they feel they need a strong leader willing to break the rules. The strong leader part could be interpreted in different ways, but breaking the rules is cause for concern, and in the past few years we've seen populist leaders around the world breaking rules of all kinds in dangerous ways. Understand that breaking the rules and norms usually governing politics or international cooperation isn't a viable way forward, and it doesn't solve the problem of an out-of-touch politician. The best solution to solve that is by working toward a generation of politicians who are genuinely in touch. Number 4. Unreliable media. In the old days, we got our news from a limited number of sources that carefully checked their stories. Sure, media bias existed, but blatant lies were rare. Now, anybody can be a journalist or a political mouthpiece. It sounds like a great way of making the media more democratic, but it causes problems too. 68% of Americans get their news from social media, often from sources that have little or no fact-checking. And studies tell us that lies spread faster than truths. Of course, there is a need for social networks to take more action, which is already starting to happen. But on an individual level, we need to be extremely cautious and media savvy. Always check the source of what you read and how reputable it seems to be. And cross-check reports that sound suspicious. If it looks sketchy, don't believe it, and definitely don't share it. Number 5. Societies are increasingly divided. This is another symptom of getting our news and commentary from social media. Our Twitter feed will show us only news from people or organizations that we follow, so the stories we end up reading are tailored to our pre-existing beliefs, and whatever views we have just end up being magnified, and we rarely get a chance to hear other views and consider their worth. In the USA, 84% of people believe the country is divided, and the same is happening everywhere else. Look at the UK after Brexit, where family gatherings often turn into heated arguments because different generations of the same family voted differently in a referendum that had huge outcomes for the country, and they feel resentment toward each other. How can we solve this? A good start to this is by listening to other opinions and follow a range of news sources to break out of your echo chamber. Number 6. Internet privacy. You may not be that bothered by this. Maybe you might think, I have nothing to hide. But as Edward Snowden put it, arguing you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is like arguing you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. Remember, when you don't pay for setting up a social media account, that means you pay with privacy. You might not notice it, but every piece of information you share online is being mined, used, and misused with very real consequences. Just take a look at the Cambridge Analytica scandal, how they used data from social networks to manipulate opinion in the lead-up to the 2016 election in the USA and the Brexit vote in the UK. Its actions had real impacts and have since come under criminal investigations. This one, though, isn't simple, as most of us rely on social media socially or even professionally. But at the very least, we need to be aware of the choices we make on social media and the consequences they could have. Number 7. Work burnout. More and more people are feeling burned out by their jobs. Burnout has even been classified as a medical diagnosis by the WHO. In an ever-competitive world, symptoms include being unable to sleep, feeling exhausted and pessimistic, losing motivation, and even forgetfulness. Solutions can be difficult. We can't wave a magic wand and make work culture disappear. Just remember that nowadays options exist that can point you to a more satisfying path, like being able to set up your own business online. It isn't easy, but it could lead to higher levels of fulfillment, or even opportunities to train or retrain online without the cost of a university course. We're not saying that any option is an easy fix, but at least be aware of the options available to you. There are more options than ever before. Number 8. Social media addiction. Totally aside from the problems of fake news and internet privacy concerns, we seem to be getting to the stage where we're unable to connect personally. Because we're mesmerized by the screens in front of us, yes, they serve a purpose, and yes, they're useful, and yes, we realize you're watching this video on a device of some kind, but psychologists estimate that 10% of Americans are addicted to social media. That means having excessive urges to use it, to the extent it affects other parts of your life. Be aware that it's a problem. Try to limit your screen time and enjoy what's going on in the real world outside of your device. Number 9. Racism. Few people nowadays are willing to express outwardly racist opinions, unlike a century ago when it was pretty normal to do this. But we still have such a long way to go, and it's a sad fact that racism still exists in many ways that vary from country to country. It could be in ways that have devastating consequences, as we're seeing with the tragic events that have led to the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. In some countries, it might be more skin color may affect the result of job interviews, and salaries get skewed in favor of a particular skin color, almost always the lighter skin color. There are complexion issues at play, but be aware of your own prejudices. We all have them, and try your best to overcome them. Number 10. Hate crimes. We just said that most people don't express openly racist views, but unfortunately there are those who do and take pride in these sickening views. And over the last 5 years, opinions like these have been going up in many countries, and so have hate crimes. Most of them are based on race or ethnicity, followed by religious affiliation or sexual orientation. There's no doubt that these have been fueled by the rise of echo chambers, where people can get radicalized in horrible opinions. And true, poverty and failure of educational systems don't help, as people who feel marginalized seek the refuge of extreme ideologies. Solving this one probably requires us to solve all of those problems first, and also being absolutely firm and not tolerating opinions that are unacceptable. Number 11. Obesity and diabetes rates. As we work harder and spend more time in front of screens, stress levels go up and energy levels go down. Health problems like these are on the rise. Overall, health is getting worse and it's driving life expectancy down. On a personal level, you've got to take responsibility. Watch what you eat and don't skip exercise. Number 12. Drug epidemics. In the USA, the opioid epidemic has doubled in the past decade, with 130 people dying from overdoses every day. It's bound to be fueled by rising levels of stress and poverty as people seek an outlet from the harsh realities of life. So solving it requires solving those problems too. But it's interesting to note that countries with more liberal drug policies tend to have this problem better under control. Case in point, Portugal, which had high rates of drug addiction in the 90s. In 2001, they decriminalized all drug use and began treating drug addiction as a medical problem rather than a crime. The result? Amazingly, drug use, drug-related deaths, drug-related crimes, and HIV infection miraculously went down. Number 13. Traffic. While we're feeling more burned out, things like the amount of time we spend in traffic commuting aren't exactly helping. People who drive on a regular basis spend 54 hours a year sitting in traffic. That's 1,000 hours in wasted time and fuel. It causes stress and, of course, increased pollution. And studies show that ride-sharing, convenient as it is, actually makes traffic worse. It seems that a possible way forward has come from the most unlikely of sources, the coronavirus pandemic. Working from home and teleconferencing have their problems, but they do provide a way out of this one. Number 14. Increasing isolation of countries. For years, we've seen the world's development marked by faraway countries coming closer together, cooperating and enjoying parts of each other's cultures, be it music, food, or fashion. This has led to a greater understanding and tolerance, and it's no coincidence that this period has been marked by fewer wars. At the same time, more and more problems are ones that need to be solved on a global level, not just fixing the environment, and yes, the coronavirus pandemic. We've seen so much progress toward working together. Now it seems to be reverting to more isolationism, and the local version of this? Growing distrust of immigrants. This makes no sense. The world has benefited hugely from being more interconnected. Splitting it apart just doesn't seem right. Be proud of the country or region you're from, but see yourself as a part of a global community as well. Number 15. Climate change and environmental destruction. We've saved this one for last, but definitely not least. Research says that millennials see climate change as the most pressing problem in the world, and make no mistake that it's the result of society and the way we produce things by burning fossil fuels. And the result isn't just that we destroy the balance in the world's climate. We destroy habitats and drive species to extinction, and closer to home, create air pollution in our cities and devastating hurricanes. We more or less know the solutions. Companies need to switch to cleaner energy and pollute less. Governments need to put policies in place that will make this happen. And as individuals, we have to reduce our carbon footprint by consuming less and more responsibly, and by recycling more. It's just a case of having the collective will to make it happen. Aluxers, which of these problems do you find most concerning? And what solutions can you think of that would help the most? Let us know in the comments. And as you've stayed with us until the end, you know it's time for today's bonus. One problem in society that we've saved for last, something that's hugely important but almost impossible to measure, the decline in happiness. Yes, you can measure income, or traffic accidents, or average global temperatures, but there's no reliable way to measure happiness. But organizations do try, like the people who write the World Happiness Report, and they tell us that it's been going down steadily for over a decade. And the fact that all the other problems on the list have been increasing means it's no wonder happiness levels have been going down. But there is an idea that is gaining ground and offers a solution. What we're talking about is a paradigm shift, or fundamental change in approach. When economists measure the success of any country, traditionally they use GDP, or gross domestic product, to measure it. But does that really translate into well-being? Well, some people have started to suggest that instead we use happiness as a measure, and the government of New Zealand is taking the approach seriously, and so is the UN. Yes, measuring happiness in a scientific way is borderline impossible, but even so, changing the focus away from just growing our economies could have the effect of getting us closer to a goal that really matters: being happier. Thank you for spending some time with us, A-Luxers.